The Toronto Blue Jays had their draft the other day, and apparently it was one of the best drafts in recent memories. Now, we're not familiar with the prospects that they took, and we're not familiar with the players that they're going to become, but it's safe to say that a lot of people on Blue Jays Twitter were very happy with the selections, and a lot of them have signed in the most recent days. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Welcome back from the off day that we had yesterday. The Blue Jays are getting set to take on the San Diego Padres tonight with Alek Manoah on the mound, facing off against Joe Musgrove. It's going to be a tough series. The San Diego Padres are a very fun team to watch, but they've been underperforming, so hopefully the Jays can take care of business and keep this hot streak rolling. But Nick, the draft picks have started to trickle in for the Toronto Blue Jays in what's known to be a pretty weak farm system amongst most MLB teams. The Blue Jays are starting to beef up their pipeline, and they're signing a lot of their early round picks here in the last couple of days.
Yeah, the Blue Jays have been making a lot of moves recently, especially with the draft. And like you said, this draft was kind of known as around the MLB as one of the best drafts in recent years for the Blue Jays, and arguably among any teams in the MLB. So it's very good to see that. And like you said, a lot of signings have happened. We'll go through with all of them. But Peter, let's just start with Namala here, and he signed for I believe $750,000 less under the slot value, which is the opposite of what everyone else thought was going to happen. They thought he was going to go over the value because he was projected to go in the top 10 or 11. What are your thoughts on this move? The Blue Jays, at the end of the day, had a phenomenal draft. They signed tons of their players to reasonable slots, and I could not be more happy with the moves they made.
Right. So it was actually worrying me a little bit because he was taking a few days to sign, and I was wondering what the reason for that was. And he ended up signing for $750,000 below the slot value, like you just said. But I think that's because the Blue Jays had so many steals in this draft that they had to save money somewhere. And if you're a 17-year-old, how can you say no to $3 million to play baseball, right? So I guess that was his thought process in this whole thing, and he understands the potential impact that he could have on the Toronto market. So it was a no-brainer for him to sign that deal, and he's heading to a pretty good organization in the Toronto Blue Jays, and I'm sure he's very happy about that. But there was one pick in the fifth round, I believe, either the fourth or fifth round, and it was Landon Maroutis who signed for $1 million over slot value. Now, this is why you try to save some slot money in order to sign these guys that you stole later on in the draft to above slot, because Maroutis was a very highly touted high school prospect. He was committed to Texas Tech or TCU, something like that, and he was headed there. He was going to go 100%, but the Jays enticed him with 2 times more than the money he would have seen if it were any other team that drafted him. So it was a no-brainer for him to sign as well. They still have a few early picks that they do need to get taken care of, but they're doing a good job, and I gotta believe that James Click, the former general manager of the Houston Astros, has a lot to do with this and has his fingerprints all over this.
Yeah, and that was kind of an underrated former Astros guy, and the Astros, we all know they've been a really good team for a long time. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of different signings happening here. Like you mentioned, over the value, and Random Marotis signed. We also had, here's kind of a list of all of them if you want to go through and pause the video and look at those. Namala we got for, I guess, plus signifying under slot value. Like you said, Marotis, about $1 million over value there, and then the other ones as well. But regardless, the big question coming in after the draft, like you said, was whether the Blue Jays will be able to sign them all, because it seems like they were getting every steal that the MLB insiders or the prospect guys were saying. And they ultimately did it very, very good. And James Click, definitely everyone in the front office, but James Click is the newest addition there, at least from the prospect side. And very, very impressive. In the Blue Jays farm system, we have other guys, of course, closer to the MLB, like Arelis Martinez starting to fly up, Addison Berger starting to do well. The guys who were kind of lower on that list, say a year ago, are now starting to flood up, and the system is starting to look beefier and beefier each day and each game that these guys play in the minors.
Right. Now, the reason why I said James Click had his fingertips all over this is because the Astros have a track record of being phenomenal in recent MLB drafts. Now, he wasn't there when they selected Carlos Correa first overall. He wasn't there when they selected Alex Bregman first overall, but they've had a couple of prospects that have panned out in the past couple of years as well. So James Click was a part of that development, and it was just a great pickup in general for the Blue Jays front office. A lot of wisdom, a lot of success that you're bringing in James Click. So I'm sure he had a lot to say about this draft. And the Blue Jays, they reached for a couple of guys, but for the most part, the general consensus is that they stole a lot of these prospects. And I believe, I'm not sure who it was. There was someone that was ranked 66th. I think it was Jace Bromfin or something
Something like
like
that. Yeah.
that. He was ranked 66th, and the Jays got him with the 150th pick. So you only have 6.5 million to sign all these prospects once you draft them. So you gotta find a way to like wiggle your way out of things in a sense, and they were able to do that. And I'm very happy with the way the draft panned out. It's gonna take maybe 5 or 6 years till we know for a fact, but all the indications are pointing towards a positive draft.
Yeah, and looking again at this, you can see all the guys in case you're familiar with any of them. But overpaying, underpaying, whatever it is, they have money left now to spend on the remaining unsigned picks. And even a guy like Watts Brown was projected to go a lot higher, I guess lower than he was. And this, pans back to our video about a week ago when the draft happened, and you look at the different prospects that the Jays got compared to their actual, projections. And again, it just goes to show how, like you said, James Click, phenomenal. We knew he was going to be a phenomenal guy coming in, but this is about as good of a draft as you could have gotten. And this can kind of flood into the topic now about the trade deadline that's upcoming. The Blue Jays have a lot of prospects that are starting to perform well. Do you think that they could, potentially use some of these, improving prospects in a trade to go for it this year, considering their record?
Look, I look at it this way. If I'm the Toronto Blue Jays, this team started playing well when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. started to find his stride at the plate. So I don't know what they need. I don't know what they need to add. Maybe another starter, maybe another bullpen arm. Although the bullpen has been their saving grace this season, it's hard not to speculate. And with all these new prospects that are coming in, we do this every draft period. Can these guys be trade bait? Can they move up through the ranks quickly? Like the speculation starts, and it's going to happen no matter what. But with all these prospects that are performing pretty well for the Blue Jays, whether it be Davis Schneider, whether it be Arovis Martinez, there's a lot of guys that are performing up to standard in the minor leagues and maybe even forcing their way onto the 40-man roster or even onto the major league roster. So that's going to be interesting to monitor as the season goes along. I don't think the Jays are going to go all in for a specific piece at the deadline, maybe a couple of minor additions like they did with Whit Merrifield and with Mitch White last deadline. So it's hard to say, Nick, but I do see them making a couple of moves, but I can't see them moving on from any high-end prospects either. It would have to be a very like game-changing move for them to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, and there's not many of those available. Obviously, Marcus Stroman, the guy that we talked about in our video a couple days ago, is probably going to be the biggest target for. Maybe it might end up being the biggest target for the Blue Jays, but like you said, the farm system isn't super strong to begin with, so I'd be a little bit hesitant unless they think they can get someone that really puts them over the top to give away those guys like Arovis Martinez, who seems to have a revolutionized approach, Addison Barger, and even, of course, Ricky Tiedemann, who's been injured in Barriera. But overall, it's going to be a very, very exciting next couple weeks for the trade deadline as well, just for the future for all these prospects that we got, because I can't remember a draft, let alone a Blue Jays draft, being this talked about, around the team in many years to come. But that'll wrap up the video. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.